As we've discussed, Governor Doug Ducey's plan to close the Florence State Prison marks a major shift for Arizona's Department of Corrections, one that requires relocating thousands of inmates and shutting down a facility that has come to shape the town sharing its name. Now over a century old, the governor says shuttering the prison would save $274 million over 3 years that would otherwise go toward maintenance.
With what we're going to do in the future, we'll continue to benefit our whole state.
His proposed budget includes $33 million to cover the cost of moving forward. That involves transferring employees to the nearby Iman prison and sending inmates to other state and county facilities as well as private prisons. A statement from the governor's office says in part that the process will take time, and over the next several months, the Department of Corrections will, quote, ensure the transition prioritizes the safety of inmates, correctional officers, and prison staff. The initial announcement came as a surprise to officials in the town of Florence, who say closing the prison will have consequences. We learned more from Public Information Officer Ben Bitter, who spoke to us via Skype.
Pretty significant impacts for the town of Florence, largely because of how we fund operations in the state of Arizona, and that's by population. And so prisoners and members of university students that live in dorms are all considered group quarters residents. Group quarters residents are included within the populations of the towns where they reside. And so for us in Florence, we have about 17,000 inmates. Those inmates are part of our population.
Ben, let's say the town of Florence loses some 4,000 inmates. What are the implications?
We receive about $400 per person for state shared revenue. So that's money that comes from the state back to the town through the income taxes that we pay to the state. They distribute a portion of that back to the communities. And so as a portion of that, we pay for streets, we pay for police officers and firefighters, and a variety of our parks and recreation and aquatic center. Those types of services are all funded through our general fund, which would take the largest hit directly from the loss of 4,000 people. So with about a $14 million budget, we'd anticipate about a $1.3 million direct hit to the budget, which is about 10%. And so we certainly would have to tighten the belts and figure out the best way to maximize the efficiencies within our operations and do all that we can to ensure that our public is not harmed.
I spoke with the governor, and the way he described it is that these inmates would likely go to counties or other facilities within the state prison system. Some people seem to think a lot of them would stay there in Pinal County. Does any of that make this right?
We're still discovering kind of what the full impacts are. We haven't had a chance to meet with the director of the Department of Corrections and now the Department of Corrections Rehabilitation and Reentry, and had to have some brief conversations with him about what he anticipates this process looking like or how this transition occurs. In talking with our colleagues over at the Pinal County Jail, we know that they have about 800 vacant spots at their facility. That's really a fraction of the amount of inmates that could be lost to the town of Florence in the grand scheme of things. And so we certainly want to partner with the state on figuring out if new facilities need to be constructed. We have land available to do that, and it's already zoned and proper for correctional industry growth. And so we want to explore that possibility as well as any others that the state may be willing to look at.
I know Florence and the state prison are somewhat synonymous with each other. As you noted on your website, the tower is part of your town logo, its seal. How does the landscape change should this come to fruition and this community loses, as you noted, 4,000 residents?
Yeah, it's a big impact, and that's why I think we want to be at the table with the governor, his staff, the Department of Corrections, and the legislators as we're all kind of marching this path forward. Now, this is hundreds of acres of land within the town of Florence, and it's not just within the town. This is on the state highway, and so it's very visible. And it is within the very fabric of our community. We are a historic town founded in 1866, and the state prison complex was built and started construction of that before the state was even a state. And so lots of history within our town, and we want to do the best we can to preserve that history and celebrate it wherever we can.
The governor told me that he doesn't want to build another prison in the state of Arizona under his watch. This facility, 100 years old, if not more. What do you hope happens next? I know you're talking with the state. You sound hopeful about the communication moving forward, but what's the next phase for you?
I think for us, we need to look at all of the impacts. I mentioned some of the direct impacts earlier, such as the loss of state shared revenue to our general fund. But there are secondary impacts as well that could be very massive to our local economy and to our residents. We, for example, treat the sewage that comes out of the state prison complex, and that goes into our wastewater fund. Removing the Florence State Prison complex removes about $750,000 per year out of our wastewater fund. And because those funds are built to sustain themselves and run like a business, that could mean that the rates for sewage for the rest of our citizens have to increase enough to offset that amount. And so we're certainly concerned about how that type of thing moves forward, and would love to really just continue these discussions with the department and with the governor's office and the legislators as the session continues and as the budget is further developed, to ensure that we are doing whatever we can to really minimize those impacts and figure out ways that are going to be positive solutions for our community and for the region.
All right, Ben Bitter from the town of Florence, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.